Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast. I am really excited to introduce and share with you Ron Dan, who is the president of Trailblazer Firearms. Welcome, Ron, and thank you for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
This has been something I've been really looking forward to. You're one of the very interesting people in our industry, and I think people are going to be flocking to this podcast, hopefully the YouTube video so they can see you. But I'm excited to hear about your insight on our industry, and tell me a little bit about, maybe we could start with, how did you get into the industry? Because you've worked for a couple firearms related companies, but I'd love to hear what brought you to our industry.
Absolutely. So I've been fortunate to work with a fair amount of great companies over the time that I've been in the industry, and a lot of people have helped me along the way, which has been, just a huge blessing for me. So it all started when I was an absolute kid, is when I started with this kind of obsession, if you will, with firearms. And just, my mom wouldn't even let me have a super soaker because she was so against guns at the time. And then eventually, everybody came around to it, and I started shooting with my dad. And it was one of my favorite things. Like if you could get me to do anything in the world, if you said, hey, if you do this, I'll take you shooting afterwards, right? Like that's the only thing I cared about going to do. And so that was my favorite thing to do. When my dad passed, one of my ways to kind of connect with him was going to the shooting range. So when I was in college, I was going to a shooting range so much that the owner of that range, his name's John Ritz, he was the guy that came to me and said, hey, if you're a college student and you love this so much, I'll pay you to kind of put on a polo and come work here. And then you get to shoot for free. And there's all types of benefits to it. So that's how I started in the industry. Yeah. I said, just sign me up. I didn't even think that could be a real job or something somebody could get paid for. So I started working in the shooting sports industry in retail, working at a gun counter and a gun range. And I was very fortunate that right across the street from that range was one of the largest distributors in the whole country, which is a company called RSR Group. And they would have to come into our range to do their 4473s and their transfers. And that's how I got to know almost everyone at the company. And over the 3 years that I worked there, I networked with those folks coming in enough to say, hey, and this is all with permission from the owner of the range. I said, hey, when I graduate from college, I'd love to come work for you guys. And so I graduated. I did a little internship at a safe company called Heyman Safe Company, helping them launch their gun safe brand and starting all the marketing material for that. And shortly after, I got the call from RSR to come on board with them. And so I started almost right out of college as a buyer at RSR, which was a huge opportunity for me.
And what a way to learn about the industry.
Oh my gosh. Huge. And talk about, one of the big things I'll talk to you about, and that we'll talk about during this whole thing, is the importance of networking and having like a good network that you stay in contact with and being visible in the industry. And obviously that was a huge step up, being with RSR, because everyone gets to know you at that point. As a buyer at one of those big distributors, you're a very public facing individual in the industry. And so that allowed me to expand my network pretty quickly. So I worked there for, over 2 years, almost 3 years that I was working there, and then went to another distributor up in Tennessee called Chattanooga Shooting Supplies, worked there for 5 years to the day. And then from there went to go work for a company called Vertex, which is, they're actually the company that we still use for apparel and our bags at Trailblazer. I was able to work with the commercial team there as the national sales manager, and then went on to work for a company called Strike Group, which Shailene, you know them very well. And so that's in Bozeman, Montana. And they're a very unique company. They do a little bit of consulting, a little bit of private equity. They help a lot of different companies in the industry. And one of the companies that we started to work with at Strike Group is a company called Trailblazer Firearms. And we never quite got down the road of working with them, but in that, started down the route of me talking to the owner, who I had known since the beginning of the company.
And that's kind of how it goes in our industry, isn't it? You hear this frequently. It's really about networking. And I hear that often. You start having conversations as a buyer or working for Strike Group, and look at now you're utilizing Vertex. You know, it's all about those relationships, which is, I think, very unique in our industry.
And that's one thing we always talk about in the industry is, it can be it's a huge blessing to me, but it can be a curse also. It's a very small industry. The reputation that you have stays with you forever. And everyone has a long memory in our industry. So if you're a great person and people like you, it'll take you a long way. But if you make mistakes and if you burn bridges, that will stick with you forever. And one of the things we all love about this industry, and we were talking about this earlier, is the people. The people in this industry, I think, is what makes it the best industry in the world. And if you are a bad person, you'll get weeded out of the industry pretty quickly. And fortunately, we just have an amazing industry full of great people. So
don't you think, though, your genuine passion for the products that you work with at every single organization you've mentioned really drives your success? Because I see the people that are truly passionate about our products. Do you have to love firearms to work in our industry? No, technically you don't. But I think people are more successful because they're utilizing the products. They understand the consumer. They understand the packaging. They understand what people are looking for because you're frequenting those places.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't talk enough about, if you look at the companies that have leadership teams that are just, the actual core of the leadership teams are end users that are passionate about the products. They're the most successful. So if you look at like Bruce and Tim and Scott at Leupold, all of them are just, they love this stuff, that they live and breathe it. This is what they would do on their off time, even if they weren't getting paid to do it. If you look at Cody and Brett and Justin at Taurus, these are all folks that they carry a gun every single day. They love what they do. Cody's one of the best competitive shooters I've ever worked with and ever, gotten a chance to train with. And Brett, obviously, I mean, he's just super passionate about what he does. And a lot of us say, if we knew we could do what we do for a living now, when we were kids, we wouldn't want to be an astronaut or, a police officer or a firefighter. It's like, we would want to do this because this is a dream. This is the greatest job in the greatest industry that anybody can ask for. So we're very fortunate. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it is passion that really drives a lot of success in this industry, and it drives the products, that make this industry great as well.
Yeah. And we also, I think, I see a lot of our companies, like Leupold is a great example, where they have a program where they actually have the employees, kids are able to write up a report, and they donate to their education.
I did not know that, but I love that.
They have scholarships for that, and I think this industry as a whole supports the kids of the people who are working here. I know a lot of them, and it's not about who knows who. It's about supporting their growth and being able to offer those internships and offer, jobs to kids that do know the industry, but maybe the parents don't want them to work where they're working, and they need to go out and earn their way. They can't just work at their parents' place or work with their parents. I mean, it's a very supportive, collaborative community, and the people are genuinely happy to help with that, I think.
I agree. And I don't know if it's a political affiliation thing or a cultural thing or a geographical thing. I couldn't tell you, but folks in our industry, the kids raised by folks in our industry, by and large, they're kids that want to go out and work hard. They have great work ethic, and that's huge, and it's something that's unfortunately a dying breed in our country. And we're seeing that more and more, and it kind of catapulted with the whole COVID situation. But, finding kids that really want to go out and work and earn their way, that's huge. And I think our industry is great at raising a lot of those great kids.
Yep. Well, in your climbing career, because obviously now you're the president of this great organization, and what amazing products. As a matter of fact, I saw your press release the other day and sent it to my husband. I go, hey, look at this. They've got a special going on. Don't we need these? And so I think, as you take over this organization and help them grow, tell us a little bit about the organization. Tell us about your products and what kind of growth you're looking for in that organization and the changes you guys are making.
Absolutely. So our company is, it's called Trailblazer Firearms. And we originally started with this little Lifeguard 22, which I
It's
don't know if it's
amazing.
going to show up in the camera, but
There you go.
it's a little credit card 22 that allows you to fold it up, and then you have a full, single shot 22 handgun that actually has really great ergonomics on it. And so it folds up, it'll fit inside of the jean pocket of, or the change pocket of your jeans rather. And we say it's the last gun you'll ever leave behind, but this is how the whole company started, was with this single shot credit card 22.
That's
And
amazing.
this is, what we kind of strive for. That's the beginning of what we strive for, is to do something that people say is, hey, it's impossible to do that, or hey, that can't be done, or hey, what's something that has never been done in the industry but has some, really useful tendencies to it. And then we have fun with it. We've recently released it to where we have it to where it'll take a suppressor on it, which is just kind of like a fun.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, and so we do really neat, fun things with it. And our company, that's what we do. We want to do things that are unlike everything else that's out there. Another company that does a really great job at that is like Keltec. They release products that nobody's ever seen before, but it has a great use. There's awesome function to it. And our big thing is we want to make the highest quality guns that we possibly can. So one of the first reactions we get from our guns is people will play with it and they'll say, wow, these are really well built, or wow, I didn't expect it to be so substantial. And that's a big thing for us. So we're constantly trying to push the envelope on design, push the envelope for what end users are looking for, answer questions before they're even asked. That's a big thing for us. And then the newest product we have is our pivot rifle, which is, it's a folding carbine that allows you to have, like a neat little gun that folds up, and then, it turns into a full rifle. All you have to do is just twist it outside. So just little fun things like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
who are the brainiacs that think of this stuff? I mean, I have no ability to think that way, so I'm constantly amazed at the innovation. And I think that our industry isn't recognized for that as much as it should be, because there are brilliant people who work thinking of these things and designing these.
Yeah, so the founder of our company, his name's Aaron Voigt, and he first came up with this idea about 10 years ago, saying, hey, and he was in a hotel, looking at his hotel room key, saying, hey, I bet I could make a gun that's the same profile as a hotel room key that could fit inside of an Altoids tin. And that's how he started with that. And then with the pivot rifle, kind of the same deal. He saw a need. He saw a gun that folds up on, and said, hey, how could we make this happen? And that's how he came up with all the ideas. He's a left-handed person. I know those tend to be more creative. He's one of the most brilliant guys I know. And the coolest part about him and his wife are the number one reason why I went to go work at Trailblazer. But he's exactly like me in the sense that he is a dork when it comes to guns. He absolutely loves it. He carries a gun every day. Like this is what he does. He believes in it.
A part of who he is.
Yeah, it's ingrained in him. And so I love him for that. And he's the best. But he's the guy that comes up with all of our ideas. And he's he's going to continue. Great. And if you see what we have for new products in the hopper, it's pretty neat as well. We have an exciting future ahead of us. And
our industry is made up of a lot of entrepreneurs, and these companies get bought out and then built up bigger. But one thing entrepreneurs need is people like you to take the vision and make it actually something sellable and something that you can communicate well. So where do you all sell your products? Are they just through distribution? Are they direct to consumer? What's your business model there?
Yeah, so we do have almost every major distributor in the country carries our product. There's one that we're finalizing paperwork with, but I would say every major distributor in the country carries our product, which we're very fortunate for. And we're available through a dealer network where we have dealers that are stocking dealers for Vertex. And then if you go to our website, trailblazerfirearms.com, we do have guns that are available for sale there. But the best prices that you can find are going to be from our dealers and from our distributors. At our website, we have them available, but by far.
How do people find your dealers? Are they something they can go into their local firearms store and ask for, and they could order these guns for them, right?
Exactly. That's a great question. So we do have some dealers that are listed on our website, But
Okay.
really, every dealer in the country does some level of buying through distribution, and our
Okay.
guns are available through one of the
Great.
distributors that they work with. There is,
So
I,
good.
I don't know that there would be any dealer in the country that doesn't work with at least one of our distributors. So all they have to do is just go in and say, "Hey, I saw this really neat product on a podcast, and I want to buy it." And
Yeah.
and all
Super
of these are
cool.
available. So I turned off the little blur on the camera so that you can
I
see
love
a
that.
little bit more
That
of
is
it.
really neat.
So yeah, it's more fun than anything, but
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people end up having a lot of fun with their guns, and
Oh, yeah.
that's what we want. We want it to be something that you can have fun with, something that you can carry. It's practical, but more than anything,
Who, no one has anything like that in their collection unless they've purchased one of these, right?
right?
And I'm
Exactly,
always looking for different, unique things to add to my collection because how fun would that be to just go out on a Saturday and plink with and see what you could do?
exactly. And we say this, like especially this threaded one is a great like little barbecue gun that you can say,
It
hey,
is.
hey fellas, I bet you never seen something like this, and like
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun.
Oh,
So
that's so fun. Well, tell us, let's talk a little bit about Trailblazer as far as we've talked about the products and things. Tell us about what your plans are for the future.
sure.
When you guys need to hire people, how do you find people and what kind of traits do you look for? Because you have a lot of experience in working with people and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I think one of the main questions I get asked is, how do we get into the firearms business and what do people look for? So maybe you could talk about some of the skill sets that you would look for if you're hiring at Trailblazer Firearms, and feel free to talk about any of those positions that you think you might need in 2023.
Absolutely. So we are not currently hiring. We don't have any official openings as of right now, but as we're a small company that's rapidly growing, we're always going to be looking. I would say
Yeah.
if I had to guess where we're going to be hiring next, we'll be probably in our, on the sales and marketing side of things is where we'll be expanding. And that's, a huge focus for us is to make sure that we're getting the word out on our products as much as possible. And one of the biggest things we look for is passion. I mean, we did talk about that
Yeah.
earlier and how that's such a huge factor. We can teach, if you have passion for the products, if you take pride in what you do, if you have good work ethic and you're a hard worker and you want to succeed, the rest, all the little details, we can teach a lot of the little details in this.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of making sure that somebody loves what they do. And that's one of the biggest things for us is figuring out somebody that's passionate about what they do. Obviously, there are a ton of smart people out there. There's a lot of people that have degrees. There's not a lot of ways that individuals can really set themselves apart in this. It's a very competitive job market that's out there, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
great candidates that are out there. So I think making sure that somebody's passionate about the product, knowledgeable about competitors. One of the biggest things that people ask is like, what are things that I need to know going into a job in the firearms industry? And you don't want, let's say you work for Brett and Justin at Taurus. You don't want to just know Taurus products. You want to know, why is this GX4 better than a SIG 365 or a Springfield
Good
Hellcat?
point.
You've really got to know the entire landscape. And I think you have to be a true end user to really relate to what people are going to be asking, because you're going to hear questions that you won't be able to answer unless you really know it and experience it yourself. And employers will sniff that out, and your customers will sniff that out as well.
And you can do a lot of education these days on the internet and learn about the different companies and the history of how they got there and about the products. And you're right. I mean, I think if you're not working in the firearms industry right now and you want to work in the firearms industry, there's almost no end of education you could do on learning about the companies, learning about the history. And with YouTube videos, there's lots of people who are testing products and learning about their opinions of the products.
Right. Yeah. And when I first started, you're exactly right. When I first started, I would have to take home firearms catalogs or American
Yeah,
Rifleman
right.
magazines or Guns and
Yeah,
Ammo magazines. I'd have to read all those cover to cover to get to really know. Or, back then there were blogs, and we would
right.
be on the blogs on air, on ARFCOM, figuring out what people are thinking about products and where the trends are going. Whereas now I'm not saying that YouTube videos are easier than reading,
Yeah.
but I think it's a great tool, and there's so much amazing knowledge that's out there that I can't even imagine how quickly I would be able to learn a lot of that material that I didn't know
Yeah.
back then if I had those resources. So I think it's a better time than ever for people to learn and get into the industry.
Yeah, I do too. And with that, let's kind of wind it down with, tell me a little bit about, I'd love to get your opinion on, what do you foresee in the next couple years with our industry? You know, we are very cyclical when it comes to politics and elections. Do you see any trends that you think would be helpful for people to be aware of, or are there any perspectives that you think would be good to share with what you're kind of how you're planning on going with your company?
You know, I will say one of the things it's a very safe and conservative route for our industry are looking at items that are not necessarily ban eligible, or items that, folks are not really going to be going after. What you're seeing now is a huge trend in lever action guns, which are great, and lightweight bolt action guns. And what a lot of instructors, 10, 15 years ago would have called like a practical rifle. And I think we're going to continue to see those trends as legislation continues to attack, our constitutional rights, which is, it's wrong. It's not what we want. But it's kind of the nature of the beast of the industry that we work in. As we continue to see that, I think you're going to see our industry continue to trend more and more innovation towards figuring out, hey, how can we get the most practical and most effective firearms and tools that we need within the bounds of the legislation that's being presented kind of across the country. So I think that's going to continue to be a pretty big wave for us. And that's one of the big things I think you'll see the industry focus on.
Yeah, I think you're right. We saw a lot of that at SHOT Show, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that over the next year. That's a really good observation. So tell me, my last question would be, if you had to pick a favorite firearm, which I know is impossible to pick only one, but what would you say comes to mind? Obviously the Trailblazer Firearms, but not your company. You have to pick something that's not your company.
I'll tell you, if the house is burning down and I got to grab one gun out of one of the safes, I'm my first ever gun. It was a gift from my mom and dad. It's neat. A Winchester 1300 Black Shadow, not a particularly fancy shotgun. You got to understand that we grew up with very little money. And so the fact that I was even able to get that for my 18th birthday was a big deal. And now I have it set up to where it's my ultimate turkey hunting gun, and I can shoot turkeys out to like 60, 70, 80 yards if I want to with it. And so that's my go-to gun, because my mom and dad got that for me on my 18th birthday. And that's always going to be, it's
so meaningful. And that's the thing about our industry, I think. It's so interesting you have that as your example, because I think, what would I answer? And, there's a lot of different guns that I love, that I have, rifles, pistols, whatever, but they're meaningful to me, and I reward myself with, as an entrepreneur and being self-employed, when I want to, reward myself for a job well done, I most often pick a firearm that I've been wanting to buy, or a pair of cowboy boots. But the firearms are so special to me. They mark very special moments to me. And I think you're not alone in that. That is really, really neat. Yeah. Really a neat story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast, Ron. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this very much. And I thank you for being willing to do this. And I know people are listening to this saying, how cool. So
thank you so much for having me. This means a lot.
Thank you very much. And we'll end our podcast with that. We look forward to providing you more opportunities for other great leaders, just like Ron Dan, on our next podcast. That's it for HeadHunters Northwest podcast today. Thank you.
Thanks, Shailene.